in terms of packing on the plane, like, I always pack a cashmere sweater, I always have a Drake scarf, I always have every bit of meds that I would possibly ever need, just in case like there's bad chicken on the plane, you suddenly get a headache, you need to get to sleep. All that stuff is a part of this standard kit that goes everywhere I go. And then I think depending on the climate of where I'm traveling, it's either like, you know, I emailed a friend of mine, David Coggins, the other day because I was like, is it excessive that I want to pack 3 jackets on this trip, being 3 sport coats? And he was like, you absolutely do not need 3 jackets on that thing, right? But I hate being undergeared. Right? I hate getting to a place and being too cold. I hate being to a place and not having, like, I always pack running gear. I run every single morning. Everyone's like, how do you stay so fit, you know, drinking and eating as much as you do? Well, I work really hard at staying, you know, on top of my game. It's a great way to explore a city when I hit the ground. So, like, those things always are a part of my travel kit. And then depending on the climate and depending on the circumstance, if I need good clothes, nicer clothes or casual clothes, I just go from there. Domestically, I fly Delta, and I fly exclusively Delta. You know, there's always this polarizing thing with airlines, right? But like, Delta flies out of JFK, which is nearby my house. I like their loyalty program. I fly a lot in France, so I like flying with partner airlines, Air France. So I'm reasonably loyal to that. And I think when you have status on an airline, anything that gets you from A to B through the manic situations of airports and security, I stack the deck. So if you normally stay loyal to one airline and you can stack the deck in that favor, that's always an advantage. But let's say when I was flying to Japan, I wanted to fly JAL. Like, I just wanted that real Japanese experience. I did not care about loyalty at that point. But I always say, like, pick a lane with loyalty. I mean, I love Italy on all levels. I love going to Paris, but I just love traveling anywhere. I don't care if it's like Tahiti or Toledo. You know, I like the travel experience and I like the travel exploration idea of that. But I spend a lot of time in France. I love going to Paris and working, and I particularly love the excuse to get anywhere in Italy. Well, I've been staying at the Georges V a lot in Paris, and I just love it. And I think a part of that becomes the familiarity of the place. You know the staff knows you. You kind of fall into the pacing of like this home away from home. And I mean, that's part of the reason I think the repeat business to hotels. I mean, you can always find, I mean, all these hotels are fantastic, right? All these kind of 5-star European hotels, all are incredible, but there's something about the familiarity of the place and the staff that brings me back, because I want to feel like I'm part of that family. That's a good question. You know, I'd like to travel more in Scandinavia. Like, I've been to Stockholm, I've been to Denmark, I have an opportunity to go to Norway in April, and I'm really, really excited about that. Like, of course, there's parts of Southeast Asia that I'm totally fascinated by, but the kind of Middle European, Northern European experience is the most intriguing to me. I mean, I love Negronis. I mean, anybody who follows me on Instagram knows I love Negronis. I love martinis. I love Manhattans. I think I like drinks that are a minimum 1 ingredient to 3 ingredients. Like, you know, people talk about these cocktail bars and like all these kind of cocktail programs. It's such a wank fest, like, half the time. Like, I don't need to see a hat being, you know, over a cocktail with smoke coming into it. And I don't need to see any of that. I think also a lot of cocktails have too much sugar in it, and I'm not interested in sweet drinks. I mean, I like classic cocktails, and I would say 9 times out of 10, every bartender can get a Manhattan pretty good, can get a martini pretty good, can sort of get a Negroni correct if they understand what it is. But for me, the proportions of those classic cocktails are just perfection, and I like them all. Well, the Manhattan is bourbon-based, but I like mostly gin-based drinks. I like the Partagas, and I like the number 6 because I like the ring size. I think not a huge commitment of time, right? And I don't really have an hour to sit around in a cigar bar or smoke, you know, like normally it's like on the street or on a walk with the dogs, or and I just love that cigar. You know, it's a funny question. I'm asked what my dream car is a lot, and I actually own my original dream car, which was a Porsche Carrera. It's a Targa. Like that was the car that I had a poster of in my room. Like that was the one that I dreamt about. It's the one I got, my heart just raced when I saw it, and I own that car. You know, I think it's just a magical car, and it's also terribly practical and reliable, and it's sexy, right? Yeah. But if I could own my fantasy car beyond that, I'd like a Dino. I'd like a Ferrari Dino. You know, there's a saying, like, always dance with the girl you go to prom with. I'm a Rolex fan. I love Rolex. And I think my favorite watch is the watch that my dad left me when he passed away, which is the Rolex Datejust, which is in the preference in the start of the book. But like, I'm a watch fan, so I love Cartier, IWC, Zenith. I love all of those brands, and I love what they do most of the time. But I think what I own and what I cherish is different. And, you know, I own Cartier Tank, which I think is just an amazing watch. I own several incarnations of Rolex subs, which I think are just the coolest things ever and speak to, like, why I fell in love with watches. And then I love G-Shock, right? Like, but I think that Rolex Datejust that was my dad's, if that was out of my life, I don't know what I would do. Not only is aesthetically, I think it's such a cool reference point on how it all started, but that's the thing that connects me to him. So I actually don't even travel with that watch very much because I don't ever want to risk it not being around. You know, like if that got stolen and lost, or I don't know what to do. The watch on my wrist today is a 1680 red sub, and I have a Superdome on it. I don't like I have a Superdome on this. I don't like the Cyclops on the sub. I have a Cyclops on a GMT that I think is really nice. But it's funny. I always poo-pooed red subs. I thought they were like, why are you spending $8,000 more on that watch? And I had a 1680 that it was a beautiful patina, and it was so close to the 5513 Submariner I had at the same vintage that I kept thinking, like, when I started seeing red subs with nice patina, I started getting obsessed. So I actually sold that and a couple other watches to get the red sub, and I think I'm gonna just hold on. I think that was a really good move, and also at the time, because like now, so much of this stuff is you can't afford. Yeah. Like when I first started collecting watches, I mean, not for nothing, I thought it was a lot of money, but I look in retrospect, I mean, they were just giving stuff away. So, there's an American watch company called Weiss that I think is great, and I think Cameron's doing a great job with like an American-made. He's trying to sort out an American-made movement. I think it's a great watch. It's like $900. They put a lot of care into that watch, and it's a real micro brand, right? I really dig that watch. I love G-Shock. I love Longines right now. I think the fact that they're like kind of looking back to their heritage is really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of little micro brands out there, but I always kind of stick to recognizable names. Like, I don't really, and I love basic, old school, secondhand military watches made by Hamilton. Like, I just love those watches, and even ones that were branded LL Bean, like you could pick those up for $350 here, $500. And some early Omegas, you could really pick up Omega Seamasters for under $500 sometimes. I think that requires a little bit more endurance in terms of finding that stuff, but that is the sweet spot, you know, is under $1,000. I mean, I'm always amazed. I always kind of course, I look at all the classic old school Hollywood guys, you know, Robert Redford, early Warren Beatty, you know, Newman, you know, those are the obvious ones, right? But like my dad had great style. Like he had great Levi Red Wing, you know, Sanders shoes and mock black turtleneck style. When I look back at his early style notes, I'm like, wow, I'm basically dressing the same way. And then I think a lot of people that I run into the street or friends, I'm always kind of gleaning those style moments from them. I think Michael Hill from Drake's, Mark Cho from Armory, New York, my friend David Coggins. Like there's elements of all those guys that I kind of like pick little bits off that I realize that can be incorporated in my life. I mean, I know I could never walk out looking as good as Coggins does and what I admire about his style, but there are certain elements that I know that I can own and still be a part of my singular style. I think that's the secret of style, right? Like you kind of grab, you have to find your own stride, and you kind of get to the point in your life where you find out what that uniform is. But usually it's like I'm basically dressing in a better version of what I wore in high school. You know, like I was a big preppy North American high school guy, and I think I have modified that with slightly more, slightly better fits in fabrics, but it's essentially coming from the same place. I was not a goth, for the record.